Planning Commission meeting for the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. I'd ask at this time, if you have an audible device, anything that will make a noise, turn it off or turn it to silence so it doesn't interrupt the proceedings of the meeting. Go through a couple of little procedural announcements. Before we review the minutes, just to make sure everybody understands, Paulding County Planning Commission is a recommending body. We will hear the applications that come before it, vet it with questions to the applicant. During that period of time, 15 minutes will be allotted to the applicant to speak on the application. Any time left over is reserved for anybody else that wishes to speak in behalf of the application. 15 minutes is also allotted cumulative time to anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to an application or may have questions, comments, or concerns. At the conclusion of the public input section, Planning Commission may still ask questions of the applicant. Questions do not count against the applicant's time, or if we ask questions of the opposition, against their time either. We will then make a recommendation by vote and forward it to the Board of Commissioners meeting at the next available session, which is, Chris? Mr. Robinson, when is the next? April 11th.
April 11th.
At the 7 o'clock, at the 2 o'clock meeting.
It would be actually 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock meeting on April 11th. So any recommendation forwarded to the Board of Commissioners will be heard by them at 2 o'clock on April 11th. The applicant must be present for it to be considered, as they must be present today for it to be considered. This time I'd ask the Planning Commission, you've had an opportunity to review the minutes from the previous session of this body. Do you have any questions, comments, edits? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion with regard to those minutes. I have a motion to approve by Mr. Henson. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. And give me one more moment here. Okay, having done that, I would ask if there are any announcements from Mr. Robinson prior to us getting started.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have actually two announcements. Applications 2023-10Z Turnstone Group and 2023-06 SUP Turnstone Group have been forwarded to the April 24th meeting. It needed some additional staff input and information from the applicant.
Okay. If you would.
The applications for Turnstone Group, 2310Z and 236 SUP, have been forwarded to the April 24th meeting. That would be 2 o'clock back here, just like this.
Yes, you can leave. Just to cover a few more ground rules, anyone coming up to speak on a particular application, be it the applicant or be it anybody who may speak on behalf or in opposition, all questions need to be made to me as the chair. We'll take your questions and comments under advisement. We may further direct those back to the applicant. As I stated, any questions from the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners would not count against either side's time. First item up for consideration, Mr. Robinson, if you would introduce that.
Thank you. This is a tabled application from the February 28th meeting, 2023-01 SUP application by Dallas Meath Properties LLC, requesting a special use permit on 17.13 acres of I-2 Heavy Industrial District tract to operate a crushing and screening activities facility, earth material recycling. Property is located in land lot 1277, District 3, Section 3. It's on the north. It's north of Brooks Road and Old County Farm Road. It's in Commission Post 4, and that was tabled from the February meeting. and staff has provided updated recommendation on stipulations that are 8 that you have.
Are you where
in
you
your
can
packet.
just run those for the planning commission, just to cover what the changes were?
One of the items that was changed from the previous meeting was the hours of operation. This one would be that the owner developer agrees the crushing and screening facility will operate within hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Last month it was 7 to 7. We continued to keep the agreement in there on dust control with the crushing and such. We actually added that they would provide any required state and federal approvals, including Georgia Protection Division, and that's pertinent to the county during plan review. There's stipulation 4, owner developer agrees to a maximum sound decibels of 100 dBA at 10 feet from the crusher. The other one remained, the owner developer agrees to donate sufficient right-of-way along property frontage to accommodate a 60-foot right-of-way along Old County Farm Road, 30 feet from center line, with 5 feet of permanent easement that also accommodates utilities. And also that one it remained was owner developer agrees to enter in a development agreement with Paulding County Board of Commissioners concerning improvements of Old County Farm Road. The development agreement will include a contribution of $28,000 towards the construction of local non-residential street category roadway from the intersection driveway on Old County Farm Road to the intersection of Brooks Road. And other owner developer agrees that if all truck traffic to from development utilizes a driveway from the site from Industrial Boulevard, that stipulation 5 and 6 would not apply and be null and void. There was a stipulation added, number 8. Owner developer agrees the special use permit is limited to a 3-year period of time from the date of approval.
And you've covered these changes and stipulations with the applicant?
They were provided with the applicant, yes.
So in conversation with Planning Commission's attorney, this, of course, is a forwarded item from the previous agenda. It was tabled, not forwarded, excuse me, it was tabled from the previous agenda of this session. So the public input portion has taken place. Are there any questions or comments or concerns that Planning Commission needs to address to staff regarding the stipulations, or may have other comments they want to provide?
I have one question. Why was the permit extended to a 3-year period instead of a 2-year period?
Mr. Leggett, the 2-year period applies to land use permits. This one is actually a special use permit, which has no limitation to it unless it's stipulated.
But one of my questions is, could I say 3 years is a long time to do what is talked about here, is basically clearing the property, is that right?
Yes, it's my understanding from the applicant that it will be about 3 years for them to clear as much debris as on that property. And that's where that timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Aston?
I'll get back to you in a minute.
Any questions from Board of Commissioners to staff? And I'll extend to, if there's any questions to the applicant, I can bring them around as well.
Maybe this is already covered.
Yes, Chairman?
I wasn't at the one for the previous meeting. Will truck traffic be allowed to leave the area and go north on Old County Farm Road?
Do you have any restrictions in place through the DOT regarding truck traffic on local roads?
Good afternoon. Yes, the county does have basically a truck route policy. There are certain routes on county routes that are designated as truck corridors. Old County Farm is not one of those roads, so essentially the way the policy is written, which was adopted by the Board of Commissioners, I believe, in 2018, you're to try to utilize a truck route, and also state routes, obviously, which are all truck routes, to get to and from the locations that you're traveling to. There are some caveats regarding if your point of access is off not on a truck route, obviously you get to your home base or travel to, or if you're making deliveries, that type of thing.
So would that mean, based on the improvement requested here in the stipulations, that the route that would be preferred by the county would be from that point of entrance back to Brooks Road and then to the industrial park?
Absolutely, yes. That would be and towards Dallas Ackworth Highway.
Chairman,
Concern, exactly.
well, I was going to ask you if you're wanting to know if there's a way to enforce that. Is there enforcement availability? And I'm asking DOT, but
Obviously, we're not the enforcement. However, there is a policy, there's state law also. So again,
Okay.
Yes, it can be enforced.
sir, does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, we can get it enforced.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Planning Commission?
I did receive a letter of concern from the animal control, and also from the vet there at Hiram Veterinary Clinic that does the veterinarian duties there at animal control as far as the dust and the noise, because they do have a lot of animals that are outside of the building there. And I passed it on to Commissioner Stover. Just wanted to let everybody know that the veterinarian is in opposition to this.
Any other questions from Planning Commission? Mr. Aston, did you want to revisit yours?
Runoff, a lot of people seem to have concerns about that. Does that have to go through the plan review process at all?
Yes, we're going to require this to go through the plan review process just to make sure that their stormwater is maintained.
Anything further? Okay, at this time then, would the applicant or the applicant's representative please come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair? Of course, in this case, we have a question waiting on you, so.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Larkin. I'm with the firm Sam's Larkin and Huff in Marietta, and I'm pleased to represent the applicant.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Aston?
So there's 8 stipulations stated. Do y'all agree to all those 8 stipulations?
No, sir. We agreed to all but the last one,
Okay.
and I'll explain that in my presentation.
So you don't agree with that at all?
No, sir. The last one is the 3-year limit.
3-year, yeah.
Okay.
So is his intent just to operate one crusher at a time on site?
Yes, sir. And we will stipulate to that.
Okay, you're willing to stipulate that? Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
You don't have any other comments about the 3-year period? Y'all just opposed to it altogether?
Yes, the way, and some of the questions that were generated last time related to the way the application was phrased, where they were looking for a special use permit that would allow them, in addition to treating the material on site, bringing in site material that they generated from other sites and potentially from the public. We've been consistently advised, and it's my reading of the ordinance, that we don't need this special use permit just to deal with the material that's on our property. We can deal with that as a part of a cleanup, and we anticipate that that's going to take us 3 years. But we're here before you seeking the ability to do a little bit more than that as an accessory use to the larger business that we're bringing there, including putting conditions in place that wouldn't make sense to put in place if we're just going to treat what's on our property and then curtail operations.
Okay.
If, the way I understand though, for the 3 years, you could bring in other materials from all sides.
We could, but we're only going to have one crusher on there, and we don't have the capacity. I think one of the concerns that was communicated to me from staff after the last meeting from this body that resulted in that 3-year limitation was a concern about how intense our use was going to be, how much we were going to grow it. So we're amenable to stipulations that contain concerns about growth, because we have modest expectations. But if all we're going to get is a permit that allows us 3 years, then that's about the amount of time to process what we already have, and there's no reason to be bringing in other or doing any of the other things. We can just go home and start doing that. So, but we're trying, as you heard before, we're bringing in a substantial new corporate citizen to Paulding County from Cartersville, and they're going to put their corporate offices there and clean up that site. And as an accessory use to their other operations, they want the ability to process concrete that they generate primarily from their jobs. And we would entertain discussing limiting it to those jobs. In fact, I met with staff last week, and we talked about some various ways to do that. And one of the things that we talked about was being able to process all of it for 3 years, and then at the end of that 3 years, perhaps coming back. But we're going to be busy for the 3 years dealing with what we have. So, I mean, we don't really get anything with a 3-year permit.
So that statement is, in fact, your argument against stipulation number 8.
Yes.
So,
It's essentially denial from, as far as we're concerned, because, like I said, we have the right under the existing zoning and the development criteria to crush what's on our property.
okay. Are there any other questions from the planning commission to the applicant? I'll go back to the board of commissioners one more time. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Do I have the ability to make,
We're not taking further comment unless.
oh, we're not having a
the-
public hearing? I thought you said we had a 15-minute hearing. Did I miss it?
Well, that is for all the agenda items except this one being a tabled item. Public input was had at the last meeting. If the planning commission desires, someone can make a motion to extend that time, but it would be
Okay.
extended to both sides.
Okay.
Am I correct?
Well, I would invite questions about the materials that you asked us to bring to you from the last meeting, and we'd be happy to discuss those items, if you like.
Any questions from the planning commission in that regard? Thank you, sir. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion with regard to application 2023-01-SUP. Again, there are 8 listed stipulations. You've heard objection by the applicant's representative to stipulation number 8. That's prerogative of the person making the motion as to whether that stays in or not, or any other amendments to those. Please make sure you articulate those differences if you're differing from what's on the list. Yes, sir.
Chairman, there was also the applicant indicated that they were willing, should the commission choose the applicant indicated that they'd be willing to stipulate to the use of one crusher only.
Okay, thank you. So keep that in mind in making your motion also as to whether or not you want to place that stipulation in amongst the rest. So
Stipulation number 9.
that would be stipulation number 9. So do I have a motion with regard to this application? And a motion needs to be made for consideration, because if nothing is done by the planning commission, it'll be forwarded to Board of Commissioners for final action. I don't know if that becomes
It'll
tepid
either,
approval.
and I'd have to check, it'll either go up without recommendation or go up with an implicit approval.
That's right.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny.
I have a motion to deny the SUP by Mr. Aston. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Henson. All in favor? All opposed?
3.
I will side with the denial.
May we be excused, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Everybody ready? Mr. Robinson?
Okay, next application is 2023-04Z, application by Jerry Johnson, requesting rezone the subject property from B1, which is located on Cartersville Highway, from B1 General Business District tract portion to B2 Highway Business District for the purpose of demolishing the existing gas station and constructing a new 5,100 square foot gas station convenience store. Property is located in land lot 657, District 3, Section 3. It's at the northwest corner of the intersection of Cartersville Highway, State Route 61, and Braswell Mountain Road. The proposed project site address is 6821 Cartersville Highway. It's in Post 4. Staff has recommended approval with 5 printed stipulations. And just to make it clear, I guess, it's the current A&R store that's been located there for a long time, and they're asking to demolish it. In order to go to a store that's larger than 3,000 square feet, which is a limitation in the B1 district, they're requesting B2 so they can go to a 5,100 square foot.
And the applicant is present.
Yes.
Would you please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair?
Good afternoon. My name's Jerry Johnson. I'm with Perspective Engineering. We represent the owner in this rezoning request. Chris did a pretty good job summarizing what we are attempting to do there and why. It's an existing convenience store that's less than 3,000 square foot, which is the limitation that's allowed in the current B1 zoning. We want to build a 5,100 square foot convenience store. So the B1 zoning doesn't allow that size, so we've requested to rezone to B2. This is in conformance with the current land use plan, and it's the site's going to continue to be utilized for the same use that it is today, with all of the applicable buffers that are required from the B2 zoning that we're requesting. We have had some correspondence with some of the nearby property owners. We've had one that would request that we consider some of the trash can receptacles be utilized that would have better lids on them. I think there's some problems now with perhaps some trash getting out of the cans. But those are things that we feel can easily be addressed, and if so, required by stipulation that we place receptacles on the property that have lids to keep the trash from blowing out across the street. We have reviewed the recommended zoning stipulations. There are 5 of them. We're in agreement with items 1 through 3 completely, and items 4 and 5, we agree with them in general, but without having traffic studies completed and having gone through all analysis that Paulding DOT is going to want to see, it would be tough to know we're not agreeing to installing infrastructure that would not be merely for the benefit of this property. So we would agree to it if the traffic impact studies determine that these devices that might need to be installed would be specifically for serving our property. But we have at times in the past been asked to do a little bit more than that, and want to make sure that if there is more that needs to be done there that could also benefit the public, we would surely be glad to work in conjunction with the county on providing those improvements. So I think that's all we have to say. I'd like to reserve any other time if there's any questions from any of the commissioners or any planning commission board members.
Well, we can discuss stipulations 4 and 5 a little bit further in a minute, but just curious about the historical facts that you have already on the property itself. I mean, you've got an island for the fuel pump island, actually resides, it appears, in state right-of-way.
Yes, the existing canopy does overhang the state right-of-way. The plan is that when we redevelop the site, to move that off of the right-of-way. And we will be installing some additional curbing and gutter along that corner of the intersection there to limit the amount of access right there at the intersection and to provide better access points away from the intersection.
Okay. Well, I want to be careful for my own part not to get into the plan review aspects of what may have to take place as far as considering what the use being requested is. But are there any deficiencies on the property you are already aware of that would not be compliant with current zoning for the property?
No, and I say that with a caveat. I know that the county will typically require left turn lanes for commercial developments. You know, of course, there are opportunities if you've got traffic studies that show it to have that requirement waived. And you know, we of course haven't done any analysis of the existing conditions because we're considering to, of course, remove those and rebuild it and try to accommodate access as best we can with the amount of road frontage that we have and the room that we have within existing right-of-ways to work. We are planning to install a deceleration lane along Highway 61 on the southbound lane side to accommodate the drive there. We could consider a very short one along Braswell Mountain Road, but and we also would consider, you know, working with our neighbor for a joint access drive or some type of shared access there too, if it deemed necessary during the plan review process.
Okay. Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Where, how many gas pumps are you talking about having?
Well, there'll be 3 islands, so there'll probably be six pumps. Or
Okay,
6.
You got 2 right now, is that?
Fueling.
is that right?
I believe that's correct. There's 2.
Where are your gas tanks located? Aren't they located near the state right of way now?
They will be, those will be removed and they'll be relocated beneath the parking on the south side of the building.
Okay.
They'll have to meet all of the state guidelines for underground storage tanks.
I was first firefighter in that station, that old fire station that's behind there back in the mid-90s. And I heard a lot of tire squealing and people trying to not have accidents in that intersection. No doubt it's got worse since then, but are you saying you're not willing to participate if the county requires you or state requires you to participate on the red line? And it's gonna need it for that area.
Well, I think they would participate, but I feel like that, you know, their use wouldn't be the only contributing factor to determining whether that traffic signal was warranted. So there would be public benefit involved. And of course, they would be glad to work with the county to make that intersection safer. But again, that's not the only contributing factor there. Traffic signals can become very expensive and not to mention, that's something that Georgia DOT would have to approve of as well. I don't know that that's something that we could commit to at the county level without having their buy-in on it in review and approval.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
So it's a complete tear down and rebuild. So complete demolish,
That's correct.
okay, starting completely over. And we don't know what GDOT's gonna say. I mean, that's you're accessing their right of way and you're accessing county right of way. We can get county right of way information and access, but we don't know what GDOT's gonna say to you. You haven't made any applications to them currently, right? With,
No, we've not. You know, we're considering, you know, based on past project experience with similar circumstances, that we know they're gonna require a right turn lane. The submittal's not been made to them. Normally that occurs during our land disturbance permit process, and it's usually concurrent with the county's review process, and normally that GDOT approval is required before the county will approve. So everything that we would be getting approved to the county would have been previously approved by GDOT by the time the permit's issued.
Was there a question down here?
What's your anticipated increase of travel? You know, I mean, how many more people do you think, patrons, do you feel that you're going to get with the demolition of this and the increase of the other?
I don't have any projections as far as how many more patrons they would expect to visit the store. You know, I think a big part of their consideration is that, you know, the existing facilities have probably exceeded their economic life, and they're looking to build something new that looks better and gets it back off the road where they've got better access and people can get in and out a little easier. But I don't have any exact numbers to tell you. I can't tell you whether it's going to be 2 more cars a day or 15 more cars a day.
Any other questions from the planning commission? Yeah, I can agree that backing it up would be a safety improvement in and of itself, but I'll ask board commissioners if you have questions for the applicants.
I do. Hi, Virginia Galloway, Post 3. I wanted to ask, so you've got a much larger building here planned, about double, a little bit over double of what you had right now, or right at double. What do you plan to do differently in that store? Specifically, I guess what I want to know I don't know if there's currently the coin-operated amusement machines, or if you plan to have those.
I don't believe they currently have any in the existing facility. I've not been in there recently, and I don't know that they plan on putting any in the new building. All I can say is that you know, they plan on building it and will not put anything in there that's not allowed by the Paulding County zoning ordinances. So I think you know, I've not been specifically told that they plan on putting anything of that nature in, but then I've not been told that they're not.
Would you be amenable to a stipulation that you didn't have co-ams allowed in that property?
As the agent of the owner, is the owner present that might be able to give consent?
No.
Okay. That could be a consideration, and, you know, they can work it out between now and the Board of Commissioners meeting on the 11th.
I mean, that's very possible that they could.
Mr. Stover, you have a
It's
question?
not really a question, just a comment if that's possible.
Yes, sir.
I'm with you, Jody, as far as, you know, the safetiness of getting in and out. You know, I hate to see anything old like that tore down and rebuilt for new, but I will say it's more, I'm hoping this new one will be a lot easier to come in and out, because it's difficult, so, you know, I hate to see it go, but I can't wait to see the new if it happens.
Yes, sir.
I prefer more clarification. GDOT requires the traffic signal, then how much, you know, Jerry, you're very open about that we'll participate, but that leaves it wide open. How much are you gonna participate? Could we solidify that somewhat?
I know a discussion between Director Jones possibly and the owner, as well as GDOT, would probably be warranted for any details to be given, but I'll ask Mr. Jones if you have a comment.
Yeah, Chairman, let me start by saying, essentially, for a traffic signal, the way the Georgia Department of Transportation, they permit traffic control devices, such as a traffic signal, at existing locations like this. They have something they utilize now called a ICE policy, intersection control evaluation. They look at the intersection, the traffic, the geometrics, et cetera, and they determine what would be the best traffic control. They look at such things as right-in, right-outs, arc cuts, two-way stop control, roundabouts, and then traffic signals. I'll just say that it's pretty tough to warrant a traffic signal. They're very stringent on making sure that it meets the warrants that are specified in the manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is the standard put out by the FHWA for traffic signals and the warranting criteria. I'd like to go down, I think, basically some of the items I'd heard through this discussion. There is currently a right turn lane in front of this gas station going onto Brazel Mountain Road going southbound. So that's there in place right now. I believe there was a question about, Jacob had raised, like how much traffic is this going to generate? And that is basically why we put in the stipulation about a traffic impact study. What are you bringing in? Obviously, you know right now what's going into the store. You can count on a daily basis, you know, how many people are going in, how many people are going out. Are they coming from Brazel Mountain Road? Are they coming from Cartersville Highway North, or is it south, et cetera? So you have that in place, which is good. And so then you can obviously, based on, I'm assuming, the size of this development, try to project what is going to happen in the future. You know, additional trips, you know, are they going to change?
Interrupt you right there. The traffic impact study, is that a study that is generally required for a development such as this through the plan review process?
We've been utilizing this more and more for developments, especially on roads that are maybe more highly traveled or larger developments. I believe GDOT, they have a criteria for a traffic impact study. I believe it's up to 1,000 vehicular trips a day. Again, they don't always require it, but that, I believe that is what the language is, but I'd have to look at that to be sure.
Do you have authorization within development regulations to make that requirement if you believe it's warranted?
I don't believe there's anything in the development regulations currently which discusses
Okay. I
the
just
traffic
wanted to
impact study.
better understand why it's here.
Yes.
But please continue. I didn't mean
You do
to
have-
take you off track.
Well, to add to that, in the development regs, you do have, like in Article 5, you have different things that cover your access to public roads. So your turn lanes are covered in Article 5, various other things. So if it's determined that it's needed there, I think you could ask for it there. I think we see what Mr. Johnson's saying is, you know, if you do the study, you need to see, and you can make an answer to this for all of us, on the traffic study, it would show the existing condition, and then it will show proposed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
can you then decipher what the store itself is gonna add to it versus what's already there? So the amount of traffic that cuts through Brazel Mountain that doesn't use the store, and I'm one of them. I go there and I don't use the store.
Right.
And then I make a left on Cartersville Highway and head north, or right and
Right.
here to town. So I think that's all he's saying, is that not that he's opposed to it, it's just to don't know, you know, what we're contributing at the moment. And the study should show that.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. The study itself would show the trips going into the store. And again, there's also going to be such things as pass-by trips, people who are on Cartersville Highway just passing by and they stop into the store and then pop back out. But again, I prefer going off, you know, information, actual conditions versus just hypothetically trying to guess, we're going to have 300 people here today. I'd rather have actual information, you know, go off data. That's engineering, essentially. Again, I think there was some talk about, obviously, system improvements versus project improvements, obviously. And, you know, this is where if you knew how much traffic was going in and out of the store, that you would plan for that. We're not asking them to upgrade the intersection of 61 and Brazel Mountain. So, and then I think there was some discussion you had raised, Jody, about the zoning, and I think Jerry had mentioned some things about left and right turn lanes, but that's in the development regulations, not the zoning ordinance. Typically on DOT stipulations, we'll have wording access to be determined during plan review. And again, that's kind of what this traffic impact study And number 5 essentially states it's really the same thing, access to be determined during plan review, but you're saying you're trying to base that off a traffic impact study, which will hopefully provide you information on the traffic utilizing the site, and obviously trying to put the traffic access points in locations that would best serve the development itself in terms of getting in and out, and also not hindering safety. Obviously, you have an existing store, it's been there a while. You don't have 1,000 feet away to put in access into the store, so you have to kind of work with the area that you have. But essentially, we're just trying to utilize a study, utilize data to determine the best possible location for accesses and types.
Chairman Carmichael, did that answer your question? Or do you have a more refined point you want to make?
Maybe you could comment, George, on what the usual agreement is for the developer in the county or the state. I'm just interested to know how much participation will be asked for, and I think Jerry would probably like to know that too.
Again, what I've seen lately, the last one I think that I saw for a traffic signal was Costco, and obviously with that traffic that their site off of Highway 120, they footed the whole bill for the signal. So I think it's a little different situation that you have here. So I don't really want to get into hypothetical. I think first of all, you have to determine what the intersection control is going to be and then go from there. I mean, traffic signal warrants are going to be very hard to be satisfied at this location. That's my first thought.
With there being very little sight distance either way coming out of Brownsville Mountain Road, and this being a heavily traveled road, because basically between Cartersville and Dallas, that's the only access that's halfway between going to Rockmart. If you're going over to 278, it's traveled highly that way. Is there a possibility of maybe a roundabout in that area that would alleviate some of the safety conditions there?
I mean, it's possible that GDOT would look at it. I don't believe it's something they've looked at in the past or currently. We've talked about other locations on Highway 61 for roundabouts, but I'm sure it could be looked at. I'm kind of curious of what they think about the intersection in general at the district level to see if they have any thoughts on that. I believe there's roughly around 7,000 vehicles a day on this stretch of Cartersville Highway currently.
So would the level of traffic impact study be determined based on an agreement between Paulding DOT and the owner as to what level you're actually doing? Because, I mean, something as intense as a Costco requiring a signal, I do agree, is a different scale to what we're talking about here. And I understand the reticence on the part of the owner to say, well, what am I agreeing to? What's the scope? I mean, is there any way that we can address your concerns as the DOT for the county and try to address their concerns too with the worry that they may have?
Essentially, we have a traffic study format that we've utilized over the last year plus, where essentially you're looking at base data, which is data, traffic that's already at the area, what you're proposing to add, how that adds on, basically those numbers added on to the existing traffic, those type of analysis. So essentially what we ask is the engineer, the owner, their traffic consultant this is what we're looking for. So it's upfront.
Okay.
So it's basically a format and a procedure. And that will be part of, we're going to try to add that to the new development regulations update.
Okay. Mr. Steele?
Back to Jerry, quick question for Jerry. And hang on, George. So you're objecting to having to do the study, or what might become of the study?
We're more concerned about what would become of it
Okay.
than the fact that we have to do it. I mean,
Because 5,
I agree with George, it's better to work with known numbers than to speculate. But sometimes, if we're there and I'm going to use hypothetical numbers here. I don't want to act like I know the numbers for this intersection, but if a turn lane, so to speak, or a traffic signal were required at a certain threshold, let's say 1,000 cars, and there's 999 cars going through there today, and we add 2 to it, then, we obviously don't want to pay for a whole intersection improvement for 2 cars that we added when, that's not that's not the total impact of our development. I would say that, if it were only that, then certainly, I mean, in Costco's case, I mean, I'm sure they
But that
generate
could be-
thousands of trips a day, but
That could be discussed, the results of it, at plan review.
that's correct.
So if you got the zoning recommendation today to go to the board with 4 in place, and then the outcome of that is 5, and then your client doesn't like maybe what y'all agreed to, you can still operate a convenience store exactly how it is. Even in B2, correct?
Yes.
If they got the zoning. The existing store can still operate.
It can continue to function as it is.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes, sir.
make a comment or two on Mr. Steele's comments, Mr. Johnson's comments. So looking at the stipulation number 4 specifically says owner developer agrees to provide a traffic impact study for the development and coordinate with Paulding County DOT on methodology and parameters of study. So it's a study for the development. Mr. Johnson said he generally agrees with this stipulation. Looking at one of the zoning review standards, standard number 4 is whether or not the zoning proposal will result in a use which will or could cause an excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. So existing streets and transportation facilities seem to be directly related to stipulation 4. And again, it's a traffic impact study for the development that's being proposed. It's not for the
Not the
system.
surrounding area.
It's for this particular development. And as to stipulation number 5, access, sure, the traffic impact study is going to have some bearing on where the access is, but if you get no zoning today at all, you didn't even apply for rezoning, and you wanted to put in or alter access up there, you'd be going to the county outside of zoning and getting either green lights, well, bad pun, you'd be getting either permission or denials based on what your proposal is, regardless of what the underlying zoning is, based on development regs and other ordinances. So all that to say, I think the traffic impact study is for this particular development. And then I think stipulation number 5, which Mr. Johnson said he generally agreed to, access is going to be controlled by items other than zoning. It's going to be controlled during plan review. At least believe that is the case.
My
So-
point is, obviously, your client is not gonna spend all this money and hope to have the same clientele. He's gonna want to improve on his clientele and have more clients, thus more traffic. That's my point. And with the existing circumstances now, that's the reason I'm asking about this.
I think the study will address that.
I think it will.
Yeah, I think it will too.
Can we visit one other item on the cleanups? Is that state regulated or?
I will defer to the attorney on that one.
Coin-operated amusement devices or amusement machines are regulated by the state of Georgia through the Lottery Commission. The counties do have the authority to regulate that by ordinance to some limited degree. There is also a doctrine and belief that counties can regulate it to some extent through zoning, as long as those zoning conditions are relevant to the zoning standards.
So if we were gonna add a stipulation to this, we would say no coin-operated amusement machines. Is that the proper language?
If that is your desire, then that would
Thank
be
you, sir.
one way to do it.
Any further questions to the applicant? Thank you very much for your time. Did you have any further follow-up from Mr. Jones that you needed?
Unless you have more.
Okay, we'll continue on with the public hearing. Your comment regarding the quality of clientele, I think I'm part of the clientele that goes by frequently, so I'm not sure what higher
I've eaten
quality.
many a meal at that
Thank you.
place.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? If you please come in, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
I'm new at this, and I'm learning. I've been at A&R for 35
Tell me your
years.
name, please.
Vicky
Last name, please.
Hirschberger.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hirschberger. Please continue.
But I've been at that store for 35 years. I watched it grow. I watched people grow. I watched their kids grow. I'm Granny. I'm Ma. And these boys that owns the stores worked hard for many years. When their dad moved them here from New York, was nothing. Nothing. And they worked, and they got where they're at. Not by borrowing or taking or whatever. They worked. And I seen this. It is, I hate to see the store go, because if the walls could talk, oh, we'd be in a lot of trouble. A lot of us would. And we would stand there when we laugh. But you know, I would like to see the new store away from the road. And you talk about traffic, I'm there at 11 o'clock at night. I'm sitting there in front of this window doing my gas reports and everything. And I see cars racing, especially on Friday, Saturday night. If you want to see somebody cut donuts, they're cutting them right there on that corner. Because I thought a few times I was going to have to haul in the backyard because they was going to hit the pumps. But it's not going to bring no more business than what we got. We do good. We manage. You get a home-cooked breakfast. You get lunch. You get a home atmosphere. That's a mom and pop store. Talk about ding-dings? No, ma'am, I don't allow it. I had them took out years ago. Glass pipes, I had them come in. Hey, man, you sell them little glass pipes? No, I don't sell crack pipes, sorry. Don't do it. I run the store. They own it. But I run the store, and I got a few customers in here could probably back me up on it.
I don't doubt it.
3 rules in that store. No politics, no religion, and no racism. Leave it out there on Highway 61. Until you learn to grow up and to respect everybody's opinion. That's how I was taught. You listen, that's how you learn. There's a few things I don't like that comes out of people's mouths, but there's a few things they don't like what comes out of my mouth either. So we're even. It's not a fancy store, it's not racetrack, it's not QT. We're a mom and pop store. And them boys has earned what they got. And they worked hard. All we're asking is to move it back. What, last year they said, oh, you can't move it back, you gotta have your septic tank on new ground and not old ground. Okay. So they're trying, they're working. I would love to see the new store. We're getting so cramped in there because there's a little hole that got nothing in it. Trust me, them boys are gonna put something there to sell. We keep everything in there that everybody wants. I'm there at 11:30 at night. I get a phone call. Vicki, Mom's out of coats. Can we come and get some coats and stuff? Yeah, come on, I'll let you in. I've been at the hospital all night. My mother had a heart attack. Can we come up and get some coffee? You got anything cooking yet? Yeah, come on up. And I unlocked the door. Now, if I don't know you and you don't park in front of that door, all I'll tell you is pray to God. That's all I'll say. But I know these people on that mountain, and we will benefit them people. I'm there for them from 11 o'clock at night until whenever they decide to come in and go to work, and I can go home. And I love everybody up there on that mountain. They might not like me, but I'm not here to like, I'm here to work. I'm here to be with the people. I want to keep the mom and pop because you can't find it no more. Can you go to a gas station in Paulding County? Oh, man, I forgot my wallet. Can I catch you tomorrow, Vicki? Yeah, just catch me tomorrow. Sign my ticket. I need gas to get to work. Can I get a couple dollars worth? Yeah, go ahead. I trust you. I know where you work. I even know where you live. And they do it. And yes, we have a few that are pardon my language, ladies, jackasses. but I deal with them too. I had a nut in there a couple months ago, terrorizing them boys, terrorizing my customers. Them boys are Indian. They don't know. They're scared to do anything. They're scared to stand up for themselves. What'd they do? Vicky went up there, faced that nut. He hadn't been back since. So if you would, work with them. Meet them halfway. Let's build this new store. And let me continue doing what I've been doing for the last 35 years. That's all I'm asking. I know traffic's an issue, but hey, you got to see them semi trucks going down that road at 11 o'clock at night doing 90. Or kids in their cars cutting donuts. They come through my parking lot. Why you think I got big potholes half the time in the back parking lot? I got kids on their four-wheelers and everything. I pretty well got that calmed down. But, you know, I hear, and I'm learning, but I don't understand. Traffic light, a roundabout, you put a roundabout on 61, I want everybody's name and number, social security, I'm gonna get life insurance. Cause you just gonna kill half of Paulding County if you put roundabouts on 61. I'm telling you right now. That is the worst idea I have ever heard anybody do. But at a traffic light, yeah, a traffic light might work. It might. It might say that one way so the school buses could get out. I'll agree with that.
Ms. Hirschberger, not to be disrespectful, there's about 4 minutes remaining.
Well, you're fine. I'm sorry. But I'm just here for the boys, and please, you know, think about it. We're taking an old history, we're moving it back. It's still going to be A&R, it's still going to be mom and pops, and I understand the traffic. And you say you ain't never been to my store, you ain't had my breakfast yet.
Thank you very much for your
But
comments.
please consider to give the boys a chance.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? About 3.5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, I gotta go home. I gotta get up to 10 to go to work tonight. Breakfast at 3:30.
No one else to speak on behalf? In that case, I will ask anybody wishing to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application. Thank you very much. This time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2023-04-Z.
I make a motion to approve with the 5 stipulations, adding a 6 for no coin-op machines.
I second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Steele to approve with the 5 listed stipulations, adding a 6 for no coin-operated machines. And I have a second from Mr. Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. This time, I will ask Mr. Robinson if you would introduce the next application.
Okay, the final application today is 2023-05Z. It's application by Jordan Brackett, Harmony Pastors LLC, requesting to rezone approximately 118.15 acres from R2 suburban residential to R1 rural residential to develop 78-lot residential subdivision with a minimal area of 1 acre per lot. Property is located in land lots 1069, 1070, 1102, 1139, District 19, Section 3. Property is located along the north and south side of Mulberry Rock Road. It's in Commission Post 2. Staff has recommended approval with 9 printed stipulations. We did have one call from a adjoining neighbor with some concerns because she has horses and pasture.
Applicant
Applicant's
present.
present.
If you would please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Chairman, we're gonna wait and see if we can get the map changed.
What, is it 5? Well, this one is. Well, there's 4 of them. Do you want me to go to this? Let's just do.
Good
Please.
afternoon, Jordan Brackett. I'm applicant for the rezoning for R2 to R1.
Thank you. Make your presentation.
I proposed the 78 lots of the north and south side of Mulberry Rock Road. Agreed to the stipulations except for the, on stipulation 3, the left-hand turn lane. What would it require to downsize the development to not have to propose the left turning lane? And,
Okay, you're asking questions of us. Let's back up just a moment. Your presentation is to build 78 lots
yes, sir.
back and forth across the street at Mulberry Rock.
Yes, sir.
And you are wanting to rezone from R2 to R1
Yes, sir.
to accommodate, why the rezoning? Why from R2 to R1?
To do nicer houses, nicer product, and bigger lots. So, R2, you could go in there with half-acre lots, or I'm proposing acre to acre and a half lots.
Acre and a half. What size houses are you talking about?
Anywhere from 1,800 to 2,200 square foot houses, high 300,000 to 450,000.
Well, generally, just to accommodate your question, I'll cut the time off at this point. The number of houses generates a certain number of trips per day based on who is, on average, going to be living there. Two-car home, you're going to get 5 to 10 trips per day. Of course, there's more specific numbers that Mr. Jones could work out for you, but the amount of traffic that you're going to propose entering and exiting the highway at that location is generally what's going to dictate what improvements are needed to be done. And that's something that is development standards, regulations that the county has. So you're proposing 78 lots. I'm certain that that is something that they would take into consideration when they're recommending the stipulations. We're going to flip this back around and begin asking you some questions, and then we can address some more of the details as we go along. So you said that you're agreeable to all of the stipulations with the exception of the third, and your question on that one is simply about what would you need to do to eliminate that requirement. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That and stipulation number 5 about Holt Road.
Okay. We will take that under consideration and ask Mr. Jones, I guess, reasons regarding the stipulations, but this time I will open it up for questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant.
I'll go first. So just to piggyback off of Jody's, you're looking to go from R2 to R1. You want to build larger lots. R1 allows you not to do curb and gutter, correct? So you eliminating the curb and gutter sections. What is the minimum square footage for housing in R1? Is it the same as R2, Chris?
I'm just gonna give a quick kind of comparison to from the R2 and R1 district. The R2 is minimal half acre lot. The R1 is a minimal 1 acre lot. The minimal house size in the R2 district is 1,100 square feet heated space. The R1 district is 1,600 square feet heated space. And the R2 in this type of development would require curb and gutter, and the R1 would allow, since it's larger lots, swale ditches, no curb and gutter.
And that's what you're looking to do, go to R1, build a bigger house, which you said you may go to 1,800, but 16 is the minimum. On 3, your objection to the turn lane, in the development regs, you address the turn lane, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, James?
Yeah, my question, so looked it up earlier, like Article 5, the roadway design. Does it give to what his question was, is what, if he currently develops it with the proposed number of lots? I think if he was looking to eliminate the turn lane, what standards are used to determine where that turn lane threshold is?
At this point in time, the county uses the Georgia Department of Transportation policy regarding turn lanes, the warranting criteria. I'll say in the development regulations, currently, there's language in there about arterials and collectors having turn lanes. Those are required. We've tried to get away from maybe posting too many stipulations, but then at other times, we kind of get critiqued because people say, we don't know that we had to do this turn lane. So it's kind of I can't win half the time, so we did put this in there. And again, when it comes to a turn lane, we base this off the number of homes they were proposing. If they were using 40, it may not meet it, but again, you're also looking at where are they coming from? Are they coming from the east? Are they coming from the west? How many people are turning left versus how many people are turning right? So it's tough for me just to come up with an off-the-cuff number, say, well,
Right.
this is the number where you wouldn't require one. So it's already in the development regulations anyways.
Well, that, in what you said a second ago, so the rest of the planning commission understands where I'm coming from, is I went through all of these today and was looking for ones that are already development regulations. So, because I've been in the same place you've been, working for the county and in writing stuff for zonings, and I felt like I was always putting things in there that was already an ordinance. That, like number 1, owner developer agrees to submit development plans for plan review. That's covered in Article 4 of development regs. We could eliminate those as stipulations that we have to look at. Number 2 is the same way. Number 3 is a little vague in there. Number 3, it does cover it mentioning it, like you said, with arterial or collector roads, which Mulberry Rock would be, correct?
It's a collector road.
So at plan review, we could look at that turn lane requirement, and so forth. So just kind of my 2 cents there on that.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine, go ahead.
Now that I'm up here, I guess the other discussion point was item number 5 regarding donate right-of-way along the property frontage to accommodate a 50-foot right-of-way along Holt Road. Currently, Holt Road does not have what we would consider like a standard right-of-way and a standard road width. They're proposing to utilize Holt Road from this plan as an access. So the way the county regulations are worded, you provided a standard roadway width for a non-curbed county local roadway. Essentially, it's a 22-foot road with shoulder, ditches, back slope, and essentially you need at least a 50-foot width right-of-way to accommodate that. So if you had like a 30-foot, you wouldn't be able to basically perform all the maintenance duties and have all the pavement. So that is why that is in there.
I completely understand the need for a 50-foot for that purpose. I guess my question is, there any, after it goes through plan review, DOT will determine where the access points for the development can be allowed, which may include Holt Road.
Yes, exactly. And again, based on this zoning plat, what was shown, it would show they're using Holt Road the entirety to access for their development.
Okay.
And looking at their survey, is Holt Road on their property, or do we have right-of-way?
It looks like Holt Road is partially, they're on at least partially I guess you'd call it the west side of Holt Road. And then on the other side of, I guess you'd call it the east side of Holt Road, I believe there's some prescriptive right-of-way. I believe you're probably talking in the 30, 35-foot range. But again, when you go through all the deed research, looking at plats, what we could find, we determine more of what's actually out there, what the county currently owns and maintains.
And this would take away the guesswork.
Yes.
And then we would want, as a county, to clean that up and get that to where it's truly county right-of-way. And
yes,
not be a prescriptive right-of-way, to be an actual deeded right-of-way.
Yes, sir.
Which is now the opportunity to do that, but working with you.
Wasn't Holt Road originally a path down to the Holt property at the end of it?
I don't know the history of it, honestly. It may have been at one time.
I think Ron Holt owned it at one time. I think it was a path down to his property. I didn't know that the county took over maintenance of it.
Well, if it's possibly going to be public access, I don't have an objection, me personally, with the donation of right-of-way, because the upkeep and maintenance of that road isn't free. Someone's gonna have to do it. Also, even if there was no access planned for the development on that road, I know that homeowners can take it upon themselves to create back driveways to access it as well, which still would create a need. But I'll leave that to the opinion of each of the planning commission members. Any other questions? Yes.
What is the objection to giving the right of way to clean up the lack of right of way, or to the improvement of Holt Road? Will, or,
Can I speak?
yeah. Can you be as energetic as Miss Vicky?
No.
Come on, Will.
So, I think what his objection is we don't have a problem with donating the 50-foot of right-of-way along Holt Road, assuming that we utilize Holt Road as part of our development. Currently, Holt Road exists in its entirety on Mr. Brackett's property, with an easement from the Holts that's got a 20-foot easement that runs down the easterly landlocked line of the development. The county had a gang deed, the old right-of-way deed signed back in the 90s, that acquired right-of-way for Holt Road. They only had it from the people that lived, the Corins and the Chapmans that lived on the east side of the landlocked line. They never gained right-of-way. Nobody from the property that he bought ever signed the right-of-way deed. But the Holts themselves had a 20-foot easement along that property line. So that's what's created the situation that he is amenable to donating right-of-way along that road. But I don't know that a 50-foot, if we end up going back and determine that a left turn lane is too expensive to install for the number of lots that we may drop back and reduce the number of lots to a level that is below the threshold to warrant a left turn lane. So if we're not going to utilize Holt Road, then, to me, that's not a zoning issue. That's a development regulation issue. And there's development regulations in place to handle that.
So based on your survey and your experience in survey and the history of the surveys in and around this area, there is then established right-of-way already along
Yes.
Holt Road, but it doesn't extend in?
The road's just not in it.
Huh?
The road's just not completely in the
Okay.
right-of-way. But the Holts themselves have an easement to utilize the road and their easement. But there was never an easement signed. I cannot recall the name of the lady that owned it previously, but we researched back, as best we could online, and we never could find a deed where any right-of-way was ever granted from his property, other than an easement to the Holts.
Yeah.
And they would be amenable to upgrading. I think the upgrading of that road, if we chose not to utilize it, and we built our own construction entrance directly on the Mulberry Rock Road, then we would obviously be opposed to upgrading a road that we're not going to utilize.
Well, to ask a question of you as the designer, why did you not propose to just not use Holt Road to start with, and just go directly intersection from your northern, you've got 22 lots on one side of Mulberry Rock, and then the remainder on the other. Why not line those up? Like we typically do. You and I both lay out stuff like this all the time. What was the thought process, or what's the problem? There's something there why you didn't do it.
Well, the main challenge, or some of the challenges too, is contours and elevations. So you have high points and you have to meet sight distance requirements and things like that. So it's not always amenable for both pieces to line up at a location to where you can see both ways from both entrances. Two, there's already an existing Holt Road there. Typically, engineering design, you want to create as much separation between access points as possible. Or I disagree to some extent with lining intersections up. A lot of people, they do it. It's that way it's always been done. But that introduces one additional traffic pattern that you as a driver if I'm pulling up to just a three-way intersection, I'm looking left and I'm looking right. If you pull up to a four-way intersection, I'm looking left, I'm looking right. And I've also got to account for the person on the road straight across. So you've introduced a separate intersection or traffic maneuver there. So, you know, it can be, and that's why you're seeing these J hooks and all that on the state level now, especially on multi-lane highways where you've got so much going on that you can't navigate. And George, you could probably help me with that more than, but that's what they're trying to eliminate four-way intersections to the best of their, you know, in my opinion, that's what it appears to me that they're trying to do. So with an existing county road, that's better engineering practice to utilize that existing county road that's already a curb cut on Mulberry Rock.
Well, your client only objects to two of the nine. One being the turn lane, which if you currently developed it as R2, you'd probably have more lots than this.
Yes.
Your soils are probably a little better than, I mean, unless you chose R1 because the soils are not good and you're eliminating the curb and gutter for the cost. But if you put the curb and gutter back in, you're gonna pick up more lots to offset the cost of that. So at what point would that turn lane come about? Would that be plan review? That if they didn't get this zoning at all and stuck with R2?
Exactly. And again, this could be struck out right here. I guess everybody knows, we
Okay.
talked about the turn lane, we've had this discussion. So again, it is in the development regulations
Okay.
that a turn lane is required for arterials and collectors.
And I don't think there's really, you were discussing not using Holt Road. If you came out into that, if you go straight across in your development, that would be a problem. I don't know if there's enough sight distance toward Highway 120. But also, I have want to ask, there's two lakes that are on the north side of this property in close proximity. If we go R1 versus R2, is there going to be a higher risk of contamination of those two lakes without the curb and guttering?
It should be, I mean, in theory, it should be cleaner running through the ditch sections than it should be running through the gutter section. It'll get there faster.
But is it still going to be dumping into a retention pond to slow it down?
Absolutely, still, stormwater is still required. There's still,
1.1 acre is.
I didn't know if the 1 acre would create a difference there. Been a long time since we've had a 1 acre lot like
it
this.
has.
Any other questions to the applicant from the planning commission?
But I think if I understood what we just said, that if we struck 3 and 5, you still may come back up in your plan review. I mean, you'll still have that discussion later.
Yes.
Because if you access Holt, you're gonna have to improve Holt or do work to it.
And we would be willing to do that, of course, if we utilize Holt Road as part of our development. We would certainly upgrade it, bring it up to development S2 level street or whatever is warranted. We're not I'm just trying to clarify that if we're required to put a left turn lane in, then we're probably gonna rescind this zoning application. Because at that point, we gotta compensate our cost and utilize as many lots as we can get. So without it, not saying we're not gonna do it, but by putting the stip on there, it's requiring us to put a left turn lane in if I put 10 lots on that development.
But also going to R1, I mean, your client indicated he wanted to build bigger houses anyway. It's gonna be mandated by R1, so
That's right.
it's tough to build 1,100 square foot house anyway in the current market.
But
so.
that was the thing. We're not saying that we won't do the road improvements if it's warranted. We're just asking for the steps to be removed so that it leaves us the ability, if we decided to go with a 2 acre lots, to reduce the number of lots in order to not have to put a left turn lane in. But if it's a stip, then we're required to do it, and we have no option not to do it.
But the way I understood it written, it just says collector, so it might not be a lot number count. Is that correct?
That, and I have, being the close proximity to Scoggins School, I kind of have a, problem not having lanes like that, because there is a lot of traffic on that road during those times.
Again, like I said, it's worded in the development regulations, it's an arterial collector, it's mandatory. Again, there is a waiver process to modify or remove things that are required in the development regulations. However, it is a process. You have to provide information why you're trying to remove it. It's not going to be detrimental to public safety, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just simply a financial consideration. And again, when we get zoning plats, we look at what's shown on there. I'm not trying to guess like, well, what are they going to use this road? Are they not going to use this road? So again, that is why number 5 was put in there, because it said Holt Road. It showed Holt Road as the access. So if you're not going to use Holt Road as the access, obviously that goes away.
Any further questions from the planning commission to the applicant?
I have a question. Going to the R2 to R1, you kind of made a comment that there are additional developments, you can make additional lots on an R2. Was a study ever made on exactly how many lots that you can actually put in on an R2? Again, you've got 78 listed that you're requesting, and again, of course, we know stream layouts, site layouts, all the things that go into that contingent of how that would be laid out. So you can't just do a half and half, but if you were to do rough numbers, you got an R2 half acre to an R1 1 acre. You can, in essence, for an R2, go from 78 up to 156 if you could do the simple math. But I would think that it would be safe to assume that you could put up to 130 lots at the current zoning of R2. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say it would probably be at a minimum at least a 20% increase in the number, just based strictly on the amount of road frontage, because the minimum road frontage for a R1 is 125 and R2 is 100. So every 4 lots, I could pick up a lot. So basically, it's a 20% increase in the number of lots. That's just straight off the board. I mean, yes, we could. Yeah, the soils are they're adequate to handle half acre lots out there, but it's a rural area. My wife's family, I'm a Rakestraw, so I've lived here my whole life. My wife's a Corin. She's lived out there her whole life. So I want to keep the rural integrity of that area, and I believe development with less than half acre lots. I think our average lot was 1.6 acres. Do I wish Paulding County was the way it was in 1982 when I was running around and a kid? Yes, but it's not. So, what I would like to see are lots that are rural in character in the rural areas of Paulding County. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. I think everybody's trying to achieve that here. But at that same token, when we have a bunch of stipulations or added stipulations or things like that, it makes it tough, because at the end of the day, it's all about making money and providing a living for all the folks that are in the development community. So, it's a double-edged sword sometimes, but, I don't know how else to put it.
So one other question with your stipulations, number 8, and you have lots directly accessing Mulberry Rock. Can you fix that and get those off of Mulberry Rock?
Yeah, I think we can do,
Okay.
we can get 30-foot access.
And number
on
6, for the DOT, doesn't that also go with 3 and 5 if we were to strike it? Okay.
Yeah, that's what, okay, yeah.
Any further questions from Plan Commission? Mr. Wicks?
So, talking about those developments, going back to the possibility, again, current R2 is what we've got it zoned for. So if a developer were to go in there, say for example, the stipulation, whatever happened, and the development or the property went up for sale, another developer came in and went in and developed this as an R2, completely out the gate, which is current. You'll be looking anywhere between 130 to 156 lots, depending on, again, 20% a lot of variances. We're already inside of a school district zone that is over capacity in the Union community. So going with an R2 would potentially increase a development of that, of that size for the acreage. you would be looking at an additional 32 to 49 students inside of the school district compared to if we were, if the R1 zoning was approved because of the reduction in the lot size.
Correct.
So the R2 to R1 would be more beneficial to school operations, or the
That is
burden placed on
correct.
schools?
So in R2, again, what it is currently zoned would put an additional strain on an already taxed, area of development. Again, if we go R1, you're still going to get a increase of student population, but it would be a reduced increase of student population if it were to remain R2. So you're looking, again, just doing rough numbers, you are looking from anywhere on the elementary school side, which Union Elementary School is the one that's in question. The affected schools for this particular development would be Union Elementary School, again, Scoggins Middle School, and South Paulding High School. 2 of the 3 are already at or over capacity for the DOE capacity source. So Union, you would be looking anywhere between 4 and R1, you would be looking up to 25 students potentially being included inside of the school system for Union. However, if it remains R2, you would be looking anywhere between 41 to 49, depending on the lot numbers that would be developed inside of that increased lot total. So yes, if
Okay.
it would increase or impact the school system.
Any further comments to the applicant or questions to the applicant? Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
So, are y'all on the same page as far as the development regs and left turn lane and all that stuff? Or, it's really handled at that other state, at the development, the plan review and stuff like that. So, these properties, that's one thing we worked on when we redid a UDO, was to create something such as this that would help with the amount of homes that's being built in Paulding County. So right now, they're proposing 1 acre instead of half acre, which helps. And then, like the comment was said, and then we get 9 stipulations where if they just sat back and kept at R2, they would make more money and they wouldn't have to spend. So, a lot of these stipulations that is being put on these things that are in our development regs, and then, I can see where someone like them would say, well, why would I want to make less money and then go through the ridicule of a zoning application? I'm just sitting here outside looking in. So, I just want to say, I'm glad to see one finally come up. This is what we worked for, to have larger lots in Paulding County, to get away from them small lots. Like I said, they could do nothing right. No zoning, spend no money, and just go through plan review and get, the same regs, So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Might just clarify, Jacob, you're saying if you go R2 or R1, you're going to affect the school population.
That's correct.
Yeah, so.
If it remains R2, it's going to affect the schools in a greater capacity than if it were to be rezoned to R1. But regardless, there is still an impact to the school if nothing is done,
Yeah.
or if it is rezoned.
Well, I appreciate that input, but to echo what Commissioner Stover said, and how it affects the school system, of course, Jim Henson's got a big background. It's much better to have less students to deal with than more, so that's a win. And then what Will said, just to echo that, to keep the integrity of Paulding County the way I think most citizens want it, and to have the work done by some of our commissioners to upgrade that UDO, this is progress in my view. So kudos, Will and Jordan, thank you, for being willing to not just go for the dollars,
Thank you very much. If you take your seat, you still have time remaining if we have to come back to you. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of the application? If you please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon. My name is Denise Merritt. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just have some questions really for the builder.
This portion is still speaking on behalf of the
Oh.
application. So if you will hold on just a moment. Let me just make sure that if there's someone else that wishes to speak on behalf. Okay, hearing none, speaking on behalf.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Holt. That Holt Road, Mr. Leggett. I'll give you a little history on that. We did purchase an easement. It was originally a path, as the gentleman pointed out. We purchased an easement from Mrs. Helms, who had been a Corin, and that easement was later, by agreement with the county, given to the county with the stipulation that they would pave it. Well, 10 years later, it got paved. That pavement is now eroded. So the idea of improving that road and making it a part of your subdivision is a positive thing. It's also a positive thing given the traffic that is in the area, especially around Buchanan and 101 highways and also Union School. It's a very positive thing to have less housing. It's a positive thing to have the houses that are bigger and not the little cracker boxes that's been built in Paulding County over the last few years. Reducing traffic, improving the property of the owners that are around there, like a couple of gentlemen that are here with me today, and myself. We'd like to see the larger lots and the bigger houses. So I'm speaking in those terms for this, especially if it improves that road that I drive down 2 or 3 times a day. This was speaking in terms of positive. So I've got a few concerns, and I've not got a copy of the specs that you're referring to, so I don't know what else may be involved there. But we property owners that are adjacent to that have some issues and some concerns about this that we'd like to bring up later.
I will be happy to address those in just a moment.
All right, thank you.
Good to see you, Brown.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on behalf of the application? At this time, we'll entertain any comments, questions, or concerns, or anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application. And Ms. Merritt, if you would like to come back around.
It's not all in opposition. I just have questions.
This is the appropriate time.
Okay, so, first of all, we are in agreement that we do want lesser homes than more. We do like the idea that they would be, sounds like higher priced homes versus the lower ones, because that would give us a higher, I don't know, clientele per se. But some of the questions that we have, and you've answered some of them, we kind of know what type of homes are going to be because we know what kind of homes you typically build. We actually own one of those. We are behind Stephen, your friend. Okay, Stephen Callis.
Please direct your comments to me.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
We are behind a friend of the builders, so we've already, we like him, and so, he's a good friend of his, so. One of our questions is, will there be an established homeowners association? Will it be mandatory? We would prefer that it be mandatory, because, in the front of our home, we would be looking at the backyard of the first home when you pull off of Mulberry Rock Road. We are at 453 Mulberry Rock. So we really want a homeowners association there. Are there going to be amenities like a clubhouse, pool, tennis, things like that? What type of buffer is there going to be? Are you talking about putting up a wooden fence or a live fence, something that's going to grow over time? What size bushes are you going to be starting with? How fast are they going to grow? So on, things like that. And how close to the street that is going to be built on our side of the side? How close do you expect the house that we will be looking out onto? How close will it be to our property versus to the street that it's going to be on? What's going to be happening with the water runoff? We already get water runoff from a couple of other properties around our home, and that has caused us some issues. So we want to make sure that that is handled. And then how many lots are on our side, on the north side? I think we counted 24, but I'm not sure if we're counting right because we've never done this before. So I think that's all I have at this time. But thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Holt, would you like to come back around, sir?
I'm going to refer to my other neighbor, Mr. Shaddix, and he's got my other concern.
Thank you, sir. If you would, please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to me.
Hello, I'm Toby Shaddix. I live in, my part's gonna be the big square right below his piece of property on the south side. And, I got two main concerns, is that, number one is the increased volume of stormwater runoff. And number two is sediment in the stream in my lake, which I actually have two streams that go through there that it's going to impact, and one of them's going to impact my main lake. It's about a 4-acre lake, and I've been documenting it since they bought the place last year. So I've been documenting it and videotaping it, because I've been there owning off that farm since I was 19, so that's about 33 years. And I've never seen it, it's never, no mud, it's always clear. We didn't have a 3-inch rain, and it looks, barely a little milky. And so I was looking at their site plan, and what I seen on their site plan is the way they got their detention ponds. Well, they don't even call it a detention pond, they call it a pond lot. And, but anyway, we got, the first one we got is going right to where the creek starts at. It's showing it dumping in right on top of where it bubbles out of the ground. So we know what's gonna happen. All that mud, silt, and everything is gonna go right down there at the creek. So we got a total of 3 pond lots, and then I got one on the east side, that'd be number 4. So I just want to know if they had any kind of, have they had the engineer do a study on the increased volume of stormwater runoff?
I can answer that for you real quick right now. This is the preliminary stages.
I know.
They will have to have an engineer do exactly that prior to submittal to plan review, and then they will get critiqued to no end by Paulding County's professional staff who will review those plans, because you're not allowed to discharge sedimentation into a stream.
Okay.
You're not allowed to discharge anything into a stream except for rainwater.
Right.
Now, if it's
All right.
running across the ground and there's natural flow already in existence, you'll still see that, but it should be as clean as it was now.
I'm with you. Okay, good. That's what I want to hear. But I know in the state of Georgia, We got red dirt. I can guarantee everybody in here right now, after the first 2 or 3 weeks they get started, my lakes go look like a red dirt road mud hole. Telling you today, so if it turns red, that means there's sediment in the water. So what we gonna do about it?
That's an enforcement issue. You need to call and make a complaint.
Is that enforcement to the county enforcement or
It
to
would
the
be to the
EPA
county
enforcement?
initially. You would call the marshal's office and let them know.
Okay,
You can also call Mr. Robinson here and let him know.
okay. So that means if I get any discoloration, I can call. I hate to be, listen,
You can.
the man owns a piece of property, it's his piece of property, but I'm downstream, downhill. I've been there 30 years, on and off for 30 years, just built a house there. I didn't get any mud in it when I built mine. Never seen it muddy. I'm telling you, when I say never seen it muddy, it has never turned even dingy brown. It's always clear. And that's why I like to keep it.
I think you've established the high standard you wish to see kept, and I think they're gonna be well aware of that going into
And,
development.
and the one thing I'm already worried about is if we're already worried about cutting money on a turn lane, are we gonna start cutting money on our erosion control?
That's where development inspections will take over. They'll try to ensure that they're being followed, that development regulations are being followed.
Okay.
It's a process.
Oh, I know. I mean, I've been in construction for 30 years, but a lot of this, I mean, I can read the site map and everything, so, in everything. But I just need to know about some of the steps that we need to take for this.
Yes, sir.
So, and are they gonna have engineered drawings on their detention ponds?
They will have to.
They will have to.
That is a requirement.
Will they put that out for us to be able to see as, because I know I got McCravy's is go right across their property as well.
Work product, there may be some question about availability of work product, but it ultimately becomes open record. You
Oh,
won't
it
be able
does
to have
come, it
access
does
to
become, at what time?
Any documents that are submitted to the county as part of a permitting or a plan process are open records.
There you go.
Okay, so when will I find this out? When will,
Well, right now, they're just seeking permission to do what they're asking to
That's
do.
right.
So
Yes, sir.
it's their timeline as to when they determine they want to submit to plan review.
okay,
So we don't control that.
but how will we as neighbors ever know that happening?
You will see a permit placed and advertised on their property.
Okay, so we won't get another letter.
Typically, it will be an LDP, a land disturbance permit. That's when you'll see that.
Have you met the developer and engineer yet?
No, I hadn't met
Would
him.
y'all introduce yourselves afterwards, just so you know each other?
So I know.
Yeah, and you
I'm
know,
really
it's
not
always
butthole.
best just to
I
be
just
good
know-
neighbors with each other.
I just know, listen, I worked hard before I got out, and so as everybody else over here, we like to keep, it's rural, it's beautiful, we like to keep it just like the way it is. We understand growth, I understand 100%. That's why God made, Leland Cypress.
Well, I like to make sure that there's a clarity of understanding about what our purpose here is.
Yeah.
Is to whether or not the proposed use of the property gets approved or not.
Okay.
Thereafter, it falls to the professional staff of the county for the issuance of the permits, the inspections, approval of the plans. So all of that takes place after this. This is just saying whether or not we want to recommend to the Board of Commissioners a favorable recommendation, saying, yes, you should, with these stipulations in place. And then the Board of Commissioners determine, do they want to grant the rezoning?
Okay.
After that, it's their timetable as to determine when they're going to submit the application with the plans to the county. And then they have to go through an extensive review process. And you should have high standards. Everyone should.
Right.
And they should be aware of that. And you should be at a position where you can actually approach them. If you see something, I would much rather talk to my neighbor before I submit a complaint, but at the same time, if you're getting no response, that's what the complaint process is for.
And you guys have each other here today, so you can meet each other. And that's it. And I would say the same thing to Jordan, to introduce himself to you guys. I mean, if it was my project, I would do the same thing.
Yeah, so, okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir?
Hi, Review Board. My name is Jason Fields. I'm the son of Jimmy Fields and Regina Corn Fields. Winford Corn was my granddad. I own lot 1032, which is directly behind the north side of the new development. My mother is probably the one that called about the horses this morning, Regina Stevens, formerly Regina Corin. I'm not opposed to them changing the zoning. You know, that's a plus for this area. You know, my main concern is, much like his concern, is I have a pond, two ponds that are right behind the development. They're naturally spring-fed ponds. They come directly out of a water aquifer underground, and it's under some of these lots that are going to be developed on the north side. And so that's my main concern. And my secondary concern is the amount of traffic that is going to go through that area. I'm already getting a lot more traffic on Corn Road. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It goes right behind Smyrna Church, pops out right in front of Union Elementary. Since Rose's store has gained a lot more traffic, people are using it as a cut through and flying down through there. You know, it's a 20-mile-an-hour road. So those are my two main concerns. One, you know, how much runoff's going to be out there. I fish and eat fish out of that pond every year. My daughters fish out there. I hunt on the property. You know, so that's my biggest concern. Those two areas on the north side, you know, specifically lots proposed 10 and 11 and 15 through 19. I believe they sit on the origin of the creek that feeds my pond, which is that natural aquifer. And both of those creeks, including the one that runs through his property and Sheila Butler's property, feed into McClendon Creek, which eventually feeds into Pumpkin Vine, which is a protected trout stream. So those are my two main concerns. You know, I'm for bigger houses. You know, my dad was a builder. Everybody in my family, if you know anybody in the Fields family, they're builders. You know, so I'm for progress in Paulding County as long as it's the right kind of progress. But I'm also a school teacher. You know, I've been teaching school for 25 years. You were my principal, probably gave me a paddling over there at Dallas Elementary. And Roger's probably fished in that pond I'm talking about. You know, so, you know, I'm concerned. I've saved my money. I've lived on that same property all my life, except for the 6 years I live in God's country, Athens, Georgia, go Dogs. I came back, you know, bought the property from Bill Hornsby, who bought the house from my dad. I told him I'd pay any amount to get that house back, and I probably paid more than I should have. So I'm just here to protect my interests.
I would highly encourage you after the meeting, please introduce yourself to the builder.
Yes, sir.
But again, I would give you the same reassurances that I gave the previous gentleman, that there are processes in place. It's up to you also to use your ears and eyes, that when you see something, please approach the builder, let them know what's going on. If that doesn't satisfy you, then go to the county and pursue it in that manner. But, you know, I think it's been made very well aware to everyone here that there are environmental concerns. Don't know what to tell you about the springs. That would leave that to the development side of the house for the county, for them to navigate that, but it's good for them to know.
Okay. I also just want to address one other thing. I tried my whole time in my adulthood to buy this property from Doris Helms Estate. When it went up for sale, I also tried to make a bid on the property. When Mr. Stover purchased the property, I tried to get in touch with him and buy the property. Miss Sheila Butler was had a little bit better luck, and she was able to purchase 10 acres of land before the property was sold to Mr. Brackett. You know, the ultimate goal for me is I would love to purchase that 29 acres, and I know I have to talk to him about it.
Yes, sir.
You know, and it would shut down that one phase, and then all these neighbors' concerns would probably go away on the north side of the property. But, you know, I tried my best, and I was trying to be proactive to get this property, to prevent any building on it, but I just wasn't successful.
I understand.
Thank y'all for having me today. I also, like Vicky, have to head back to Bremen, Georgia, and coach a soccer team tonight. So I appreciate you having me and listen to my concerns.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application?
Good afternoon, Chair. Myself and my uncle, we're the owners of Land Lot 1000, which is on the northern tract.
And your name, sir?
My name's Jacob Besso.
Besso?
Besso, yes, sir.
Okay, just making sure.
My uncle and I, we are the landowners of land lot 1,000 on the northern tract.
Yes.
And as Mr. Toby had the same concerns, and Mr. Fields as well, with wastewater and stormwater and the amounts of that, and in protecting the integrity of the natural creek. Again, we are for less homes as well, but we just wanted to raise concern on our end as well for the stormwater. Thank you.
Sure. Have a couple of minutes remaining. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition or question, comments, or concerns?
Hey, how are y'all doing? My name is Stephanie Davis, and I am a realtor, but prior to being a realtor, I was a state trooper. So I'm familiar with Jordan, phenomenal builder, great to work with. He probably doesn't remember me, but I got to work with him in the past. However, my concern is about that left-hand turn lane. I know that's up to, the Georgia DOT, but having worked numerous crashes at Post 29 Paulding, Mulberry Rock is a huge, huge concern. Where this development going, there's a blind curve while you're traveling east and west on that road where that left-hand turn lane would be. Also, we already know that we have a huge traffic problem at Rosa's store during those peak travel times. Well, a lot of people will turn off on Mulberry Rock to be able to access other roads. If we already have backup at Rosa's store at the four-way stop, my concern is if we have backup from a school bus or a person trying to make a left-hand turn into a new development where the left-hand turn lane is not available, what other traffic concerns are we going to have at Corin, at Buckhannon Highway, and also traveling west? Sorry, I had to get my bearings on Mulberry Rock. So all for the R1, but I like Mr. Rakeraw's proposition, and that is that if they had to do without the left-hand turn lane but have the larger lots, that would reduce traffic. But my only concern is having worked all those crashes, is most crashes are contributed by failure to yield while turning left or following too closely. That's a lot of failure to yield while turning left in that blind curve. So I don't have any stake in it other than I've worked a lot of wrecks. That's all I wanted to say. It's just that left-hand turn lane.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
concerns.
Quite a few along that section of the road too. I was on the fire department.
So you understand. I get it. It's just having worked numerous crashes. It's like, man, that left-hand turn lane it's vital. So.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Can I comment on that? I don't think we're looking to eliminate the potential need for a turn lane. It's just maybe eliminating it as a condition of zoning and letting it be studied upon with whatever their final layout is at plan review at a further process before they build the development.
The requirement can still be there.
Correct.
What generally happens, and Mr. Baker in the back, and he's listened to me for a long time, Mr. Jones has listened to me for a long time, and I've always had a criticism about including development standards or regulations as a stipulation on zoning, simply because it causes confusion as to whether or not we're saying you don't have to do it or do have to do it. You leave it to the professional staff, because there are professional experts up here that can tell you certain things, but as a whole, we're not prepared on the level of a development plan to determine what needs to be done case specific to that site. That is what the engineers of the county do, from a DOT perspective, water perspective, planning perspective, you name it. Furthermore, there was a comment with regard to stormwater runoff, and then it was incidental, they mentioned waste runoff. There should be no waste runoff. Period. I think the whole system here would be septic tank based, because there's no sewer available in this location, right? So they would have to meet the Department of Public Health standard on getting a permit for a septic tank. You should have no issues with runoff of any kind other than, and again, I state this, it's clear in the suite of ordinances that all local governments had to adopt. Only thing that can go onto the ground is rainwater. You can't even turn a spigot on theoretically because it has chlorine or fluoride in it. It's only rainwater. I mean, good luck with that. You're going to end up with spigot water or faucet water on the ground. I get that, but that's how stringent the policy is. That's how tedious it can be. What I'm going to do at this point, though, is ask the applicant to come back forward. Mr. Rexraw, you can do the same if you'd like, if you want to add your expertise to this. This is just a few of the questions. And I may also turn over a little bit, and I'll knock this out with Chris first. Buffer requirements between R1 and R2. There was a question about that between the surrounding properties already developed and this development. What would be the buffer requirement?
There's no buffer requirements
Okay.
between R1 and R2, or R2 between R2, or R1 between A1.
So then I will go back to the applicant. Is your intent to fence the area or to have a screening device between your development and surrounding properties?
Such as like on the entrance side of it, or the house is going down?
Well, I believe the question came from a resident on the north side of Mulberry Rock. So it would be the north side development behind it or to the side
So
of
behind it, the lots were so big, I'm planning on leaving a lot of wooded area behind the houses.
So natural growth,
Yes, sir.
undisturbed area.
Yes, sir.
So you're just planning on clearing what you need for the house and the septic?
Yes, sir. Versus pulling in the subdivision and seeing everything just mass clear.
Right, so it's not a mass grade neighborhood because it's not sewer. So going to the 1 acre lots, you're gonna have less number of lots with R1 than you would R2, so less number of houses. But each dwelling still gonna require you to clear the same for the house, the driveway, and the septic. There's just gonna be less of them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think I can help with that
Please.
question a little bit. I was gonna get Ann to pull so just to give everybody some perspective on how large the lots are. So can I zoom it in?
Yeah.
Let's see how where's the zoom? Is that it
Gotta
right there?
click on that. No.
Oh, I can see it down here a lot better, yeah. There we go.
Plus and minus there.
Let's see. So a 1,600 square foot house is the size of that circle right there, on perspective of the size of the lot. That's how big a house would be sitting on these lots. That's around the lot number. Yeah, so that's how big the house would be on this, let me zoom it in.
But that's not your location of the house.
No, it's not the location of the house, but I was just trying to give some perspective as to, the house is right there, that little circle around the lot number. That's about a 40 by 40 box, which would be a 1,600. Not saying that that's what's even gonna be built, but that just gives you some perspective. So there's lots of trees, we're hoping to save trees. You know, that's what the objective of the R1 zoning is.
Natural buffer.
What is the front setback? On R1?
This is brand new, so I don't have it off, I think it's 50, Chris? 45?
The front building setback is 40 feet.
And you plan on holding to the front, correct? At the 40,
Yes, I usually do 100 to 150
clearing for R2s?
to set the house back and give it some front yard,
Okay,
so it's just not right up on the curb.
okay. So you're not setting it at the 40, you're
Yeah.
setting it further back.
Can I ask a question?
No, ma'am. We're beyond that at this point. Let's let this discussion continue. Did, as far as, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I did have a couple more, I think I can answer at least two more questions that came up.
Please.
The R1 district does require a mandatory homeowners association that would regulate things like fences, lawn ornaments, and restrictions in landscaped areas. As far as question about amenities and such, they are a permitted use that they could do, but they're not required.
Is there intention on the part of your development to have an amenities area?
I have not really discussed that.
Did you want to add something?
Well, under new postmaster requirements, just about all developments going forward will have a mandatory HOA because somebody's got to maintain the mail kiosk location for the cluster box units. So just about all of them will have a
mandatory HOA going forward now anyway, just for future reference, but so as far as the amenity area, the purpose of, I think, people that are trying to buy the R1 lot is they want their own pool. They don't want to share a pool. They want to buy larger land, larger house. Second, third home buyers is the target market, more than likely. That's what's going to be buying in here. So, they don't want the HOAs. They want to get out of the developments that's got HOAs to where they can, build their own pool, do what, have land and be able to live without having to pay those dues, because I think they're fairly expensive.
Jordan, just a quick question. You're gonna develop and build? You're gonna build the houses, or you're gonna sell them? Sell the
Build 'em.
lots?
Build 'em.
Okay, so I mean, you would know if you're gonna do amenities or no amenities?
Yeah, I'm not planning on it.
Okay.
Like he said, you have to do the kiosk area, but I was not planning on the amenities.
Back to the location of that, and just it's from the perspective of the builder. I know you said you're not gonna clear cut the lots. You're gonna clear enough of them to build the house, be able to do the septic system, create a view out front for the resident that's gonna be occupying the lot. So it's your intent to leave as much of it as natural as you can. I just wanna make sure that that's
Yes, sir.
been clearly stated. Okay. There was a question about how many lots are gonna be on the north side. Do you happen to have that number? I mean, I didn't count the lots
North side's-
myself.
It's 22 lots.
Okay, and there was concern that was made about possibly a section of those contribute to a natural spring. Are you familiar with that? Have you looked at
Yes, sir.
that? Is, I would assume that, and I'm gonna ask Chris, as far as protections for natural occurrences like that,
Excuse me. There is they may be referring to the stream or spring that's on the eastern side of the northern track. It would be required to be protected just as a stream, as a stream head that, with those buffers, up to 75 feet.
okay.
And the state waters, I mean, it'll all be determined
waters.
and plan review what's state water and what's not state water and what requires buffers and what
I don't
does
know
not.
that we can contribute much here as far as that goes, but that would be something that professional staff of the county would have to address. Again, you can bring it to the attention of the developer after the meeting, if
And
you'll
this
have
is a
time to do
preliminary
so.
concept, so this is not necessarily their final
Yeah, this
layout.
may not be the final layout either. Are there any other questions in follow-up for the applicant before we move on? Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners?
Yes, I just wanted to remind everybody that they could put in a R2 with double the homes without even coming before us. They would still have to go to plan review, but they could put it up without any stipulations really until they go to plan review. Doing it as a R1, which I can't say enough about doing that, to keep everything looking like Paulding County. But they could do R2 today, and there's not much we could do about it. So everybody needs to think about that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2023-05-Z. Again, I would call to your memory, when you had conversations with regard to stipulations 3, 5, and 6. Just articulate your desire in the motion that you make. Let me know what you're wanting to do.
I'll take a stab at it, but I may need help and some clarification from Mr. Phillips. I make a motion to approve with removing stipulation number 3, stipulation number 5, and stipulation number 6. Adding a stipulation that the developer works with the county DOT in getting the right-of-way to Holt Road correctly, whether they use Holt or not. If they access their entrances off of Mulberry Rock, we still need to get the right-of-way of Holt Road straightened out. So I'd like that to be a stipulation as well.
So we have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele, recommending approving the stipulations, however, removing 3, 5, and 6, but adding a stipulation that the developer work with Paulding County DOT to correct the right-of-way of Holt Road for future use.
If Holt's not used as access, yes. If Holt's used as access, they're gonna fall back under improvements to Holt per the development regulations. So again, where I may need help of how to say that or how to write that. It's kind of an if-then.
Just, Mr. Chair, if I can comment on that.
Please.
So, work with Paulding County Department of Transportation to essentially comply with any requisite right-of-way requirements to the extent Holt Road is being used as part of this development for access purposes.
So Holt Road is a county road that we maintain, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that currently, the right-of-way is not sufficient or adequate?
It is not the current 50-foot. It's not meet the current 50-foot we typically utilize for local streets.
If I may comment, Mr. Chair, I think this goes back to a lot of things that Mr. Steele has been saying directly and indirectly this entire time. Whether or not zoning is approved or recommendation for approval by this, and if it's ultimately approved by the Board of Commissioners, the applicant is still going to have to comply with all mandatory development regulations, regardless of whether this zoning is approved or not. Assuming that it is, and assuming that DOT determines that the development regs require a turn lane, a traffic circle, or whatever it is in the development regs, that is a requirement should they choose to develop, whether or not it's a stipulation or not. And so the removal that is being proposed by Mr. Steele of stip 3, 5, and 6, and adding a requirement that the applicant work with DOT to comply with any necessary right-of-way requirements for the use of Holt Road. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if I'm understanding correctly, all of those issues are either going to be required by law or are they not, and they're going to have nothing to do with the underlying zoning of this property.
So I think what I'm trying to say is I don't recall from the development regs, and y'all know my history working with them, that we can ask for the right-of-way at that point. We have sections that require turn lanes and other stuff, but if they chose to go off of Mulberry Rock and they put in a turn lane that may be required then, I just want to ensure that we can still get Holt Road squared away and get that right-of-way taken care of for the county's benefit.
I would presume, and I'll defer to Mr. Jones on this, that all necessary permitting would be denied to the extent right-of-way expansions are required and are not being accomplished by the underlying owner of the property. So if there's a requirement under the regs that the right-of-way has to be X feet wide, and the developer owns the right-of-way that can accomplish that, and the developer refuses to provide that right-of-way, then at that point in time, I believe that some of those permits would be denied because it's within the developer's authority to provide that as a part of this project, but the developer is refusing to do so, and not an issue of zoning. But I'll defer to Mr. Jones.
I think what Mr. Steele is trying to say, essentially a donation, that they're not going to utilize Holt Road as an access. They're not going to touch it, but essentially asking if they would donate the portion of Holt Road that is along their frontage.
Correct. So I think I can clean it up.
That's up to the owner. So, putting it this way, if they get this rezoned and they never do anything with the project, why should they be required to donate right-of-way if they never turn a shovel at all over the soil which they own?
May I call them back up and ask a question?
Is there any objection to calling the applicant back up for a question?
Jordan?
Mr. Chair, I'll remind you, you just have a motion right now. You do not have a second, and like the motion's getting clarified.
Thank you.
All right, to help with my motion and clarify something. I made a motion to remove 3, 5, and 6. But I'm asking that if you end up going on Mulberry Rock and you do not use Holt Road, that you donate right away to the county so the county can clean up what I understood to be an issue anyway, to where Holt Road's lying on your property. It needs to be county property. Do you have a problem giving that up?
So, you donate the right-of-way to fix Holt Road to take the 3 stipulations off?
Let me help. I think
Can I say it that way?
So, let me try to clear this up. So,
Show 'em what-
basically, this is what, we're not really objecting. We would have a title issue if we don't clean up Holt
Yes.
Road. So, the option of not donating right-of-way is really, do I think it's a taking? Yes. Do I have an option not to do that? No, because I gotta get my plans approved.
But back to your title, I mean, if you.
But I've got to
in
clean
your
the title
lending,
up.
in your
And
lending,
there's
you're gonna
probably
have
a
a title
prescriptive
issue.
right of way. So I think the biggest concern that we had was with improving Holt Road was if the owners of the people that live on Holt Road did not want us to fix it up and put a left turn lane and all that. If they didn't want it, then we would have had to build our own access point.
Yeah, it sounds like they were okay with
And
you
I think,
fixing Holt
based
Road.
on the meeting, that everybody is good with us fixing Holt Road up, putting it in a left turn lane, but all that, it still goes back to, does it make sense from a cost standpoint
Yeah, I'm
to
just
do
gonna-
all that?
And I'm concerned that if you reduced your lot count and you go do 20 or 10 lots across on the north side and 30 on the bottom, you don't do the turn lanes, you still access Mulberry Rock, we still have an issue on Holt Road, and you're gonna have issue with title. So I'm just trying to clean that up before you get to title stuff.
Yeah, and I think if everybody's amenable to it, we're gonna fix Holt Road up, bring it up to the S2.
Okay, so
We don't have
your
a
intention,
problem.
your intention to this day is still to access off Holt Road? As it
Based on the results of this zoning, yes, if we
Okay.
don't get I mean,
And if
we
you
wanna be
access Holt-
neighborly to the extent that we can.
And if you access Holt,
And
you're
build a
gonna
quality
follow
of
under development regs and have to improve it anyway and give right of way, so.
Right.
it's
Yes,
kinda
it's
the-
covered under,
I was just trying to look for that one more.
yeah, if we
Guarantee
use
that we
it as
can
our
get
subdivision
the right of
street,
way
it is
Holt
a
straight.
requirement under I think it's section 5.15.
22-foot road.
Yeah, 22-foot, 50-foot right of way, so we would have to bring it up to that in order to incorporate it with our development.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that if you go the other way and you don't use Holt, not asking you to improve Holt, just asking you to give the right of way to the county so that one day the county could. Because county has it on their, has a county road currently and it's not on their property, it's not their property. So how do I say that?
I would ask the applicant what he wishes to do voluntarily.
As far as donating for right-of-way to fix Holt Road, yes.
Sufficient right-of-way
Okay.
to establish correct right-of-way by DOT standards.
But I'm not exactly sure how much it's off, so that's a question for Will.
What do you think it's off, Will? I mean, from your surveying? Is it entirely on the lot?
Yeah,
It needs to be cleaned up.
yeah, it's gonna be a right-of-way donation of probably 70 feet to clean it up.
Okay, so-
It's been used as prescription for more than 7 years. It's being used currently, so that is already by prescription being used. So there's additional portion that you're looking for that's.
Yeah, the portion
All
that we're
right,
actually
can I
going to
redo it?
clean up is the portion, now, it's complicated. This is very complicated because the Holts actually possess the rights to the 20-foot easement. What was the name of the?
I think I have a solution.
That y'all bought it from?
Helms.
Can I-
Helms, Miss Helms. So the Holts actually bought that easement or acquired it, however they did. The problem is when the county went in there to get right of way, they got right of way on this side of the landlocked line. I think the Chapmans and some of the Corins signed it, and how do I get, so based on records that we've been able to obtain from the county, in order to clean it up, we've actually got to donate, and I say we, like I'm owner, he's the owner, but I treat every project I do like it's my own. So you can see that the dark line is the actual landlot line. That's the easement, the right-of-way that was required is 20 foot on this side.
Where's the pavement at?
The pavement's over here.
Okay. I think I got it. I think I can redo it. I'd like to strike my motion and make a new motion.
Your motion.
I make a motion to approve with the stipulations except 3 and 6.
3 and 6. All right, do we have a second? We have a second. A motion made by Mr. Steele to approve with the elimination of stipulations 3 and 6. I have a second by Mr. Henson. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. So at this time, again, all of these will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting on April 11th at 2 o'clock. Applicant must be present for it to be considered. I thank you, everybody, for your patience and consideration during this process. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Steele. Second by Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Everybody have a wonderful spring.